one small, unimportant decision that you made that changed the whole trajectory of your life.
When I was 22, I agreed to go on a date with someone, and after the second date, I decided that I wasn't really feeling it. And I let him know that I wasn't really feeling it, and I had a lot of other stuff going on, and he said, it's okay, I have a lot of stuff going on too. And I thought everything was fine until about a month and a half later when he decided that everything was not fine. And he started messaging me hundreds of times a day, telling me that he had changed his mind and I had pissed in his Cheerios and that he was a good man and he deserved a chance. And at first I blew it off and I was kind of annoyed, like, who do you think you are? But then it started to get really scary really quickly when he started sending me pictures of the outside of my house, telling me that he was planning a raid and he deserved a chance because he was a good man. And so this went on for like a month. I would literally wake up to dozens of phone calls and I started filing police reports. He would actually take pictures of me filing police reports and tell me that that was a stupid idea, that a restraining order was just a piece of paper. He would take pictures of me talking to the police whenever he came around and I called them and they weren't able to find them and be like, oh, all they would have had to do was look up and see me. He would talk complete strangers into stuff so I wasn't able to trust anybody. He would get information out of my neighbors by pretending that he was my boyfriend and he was just worried about me. 2 dates. I eventually had to move out of my apartment because a restraining order truly is just a piece of paper. And the funny thing about restraining orders that no one tells you is that they actually have to serve the person in order for it to even matter. And he would do shit like just ignore the process server and then laugh at like the note that they would leave on the door and send me pictures of the notes that they would leave on the door. Eventually it got so bad that I stopped sleeping because he would tell me that he was outside, that he was planning a raid, that he was going to bring multiple people and he was going to kick my door in and that was going to be the end of it. And I went to the police probably 5-10 times. I filed I think like 10 police reports and they were like, there's nothing we can do, he hasn't hurt you. Despite the fact that he was threatening to hurt me, I wasn't able to keep a job. At this time, I literally called this year the year of the jobs because I had so many jobs. It's not even funny because I would do things like not be able to sleep at all. So in one of these jobs, I fell asleep standing up on the first day because I was always awake knowing that he was going to come for me. This is the condensed down version, but eventually I was able to move and ended up getting a text message from my previous landlord telling me that they had found holes in my last apartment and that I needed to go over the itemized receipt of the charges. I went to go and look at the link and it was an IP address grabber. He was pretending to be the landlord woman at my apartment, trying to figure out where my new house was. He would send me empty packages and put on the package, do not forward, address correction requested, because he was hoping that they would just go ahead and send him the new address instead of forwarding the package. He was hoping that they would return it with the correct address. He found me on every form of social media. Every time he found me, I would just delete it, so I became isolated. I couldn't trust anyone to not accidentally give him information. After I moved, I felt safer because at least he didn't know where I was, and I finally got a detective assigned to my case because he had started letting me know that he was going to kill me and he was going to get away with it. He specifically told me that he knew he was going to get away with it because he was a black man or because he was a white man and I was a black woman, that he was going to kill me and he was going to get away with it. And when I finally got a detective signed to my case, the first time I met with him, he told me that maybe there was a misunderstanding because he had had a conversation with him and he seemed like a nice guy. And I knew in that moment that this man was going to kill me and he was going to get away with it. I was literally going to be a Facebook memorial. I was going to be on somebody's t-shirt because he knew what he could do. I just started blocking his phone numbers and then he would just download apps and just get new phone numbers, so it didn't really matter. It was okay though because I still kind of felt safe. At least I didn't know where I was. And then I registered to vote. And when you register to vote, your address is public record. And he found me. So I grew up in Southern California and I grew up very anti-firearm because my dad was paralyzed from the chest down literally a couple months before I was born. Him and my mom were both shot just sitting in a car minding their own business in some random like initiation type of thing. So it was very anti-firearm, but it got to this point where I was like, holy crap, like no one is coming to save me. Like I'm a law-abiding citizen. I'm doing everything that I'm supposed to be doing. And these people are telling me that there's nothing that they can do unless he hurts me. So he started to get really frustrated that he wasn't able to reach me. And he started to let me know that, hey, I needed to meet him at this certain place or he was going to start making good on his plan. And by this time, there wasn't too many ways that he could get in contact with me. He got down to the point where he like found me on Duolingo and then started messaging me there. Eventually, he did find out where my new location was and took pictures and then created an account and had me go look at it to prove that like, hey, I know where you live now. And I'm about to make good on my plan because I don't have too many ways to contact you anymore. And so I literally had to swallow the distaste that I had for firearms because I hated them. I felt like they took my father's legs away. They took my childhood away. I was never going to have a father-daughter dance. I was never going to have any of these things because of someone's decision. I felt like people who owned firearms were like irrational, people who could not hold conversations or who could not de-escalate. And I had to make the decision to buy one. And I'm not advocating for anyone to purchase one. In fact, I resent the fact that I had to #America. And I don't want any, far-right group trying to use me as an example of why people should own firearms because they shouldn't. We should just have better laws that actually protect people. But I digress. We're about 7 months in now, after 2 dates. I knew him for, 3 weeks as a person. And by this point, 7 months as the stalker. He sent his last message demanding that I meet him at Caesar's Palace in Vegas. Because it was his birthday, and that was it. He told me that if I didn't, he was going to grate me and use my blood as lube, and I gave all this to the police, and still they were like, he can't do anything. He started showing up outside of my new place and just banging on the door and ringing the doorbell. For a really long time, I wasn't able to hear doorbells ringing because of how horrifying this sound was. Just ring, 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 ring. I would actually be recording him ringing my doorbell and on the phone with the police, and he would still dodge them. Like, I have actual videos where he's like walking and then I see him like run the opposite direction and the police turn the corner and they're like, we couldn't find him. I was like, oh snap. Like, this man he's really finna do this to me. Like, this is legitimately finna happen. I want to say he showed up one more time. It was like at 6 o'clock in the morning, and then I didn't hear anything from him. And there's like this horrifying thing when you're experiencing something like this where it's a daily barrage of this type of harassment, to where when it stops, you think that you would feel good about it. But I remember feeling like sharks circling you in the water, and then they disappear. And then you realize that you were comforted by the fact that you could see the sharks and now you can't see them. And I couldn't see them. And so it was quiet for like 2 weeks. I didn't hear anything after near daily harassment for 9 months. And by this time, I had been so afraid that I very, very rarely slept. And I knew that if he came for me, I couldn't be in the back room of my apartment. Like, I needed to be like in the living room. And I was so afraid all the time. I started sleeping with a chair lodged against my door because if he came for me, then I needed like a couple seconds. I knew I needed time to like kind of slow him down. And in September, he came for me and he kicked my door in. And I remember just grabbing my firearm off the table, and I wasn't angry. I wasn't upset. It was just, I had made a decision that it's either him or it's me, and I choose me. And I shot him. And I remember him being like, oh, F, Deja, you shot me. And then he stopped, so I stopped shooting. And then he disappeared. And I thought that I was going insane because I didn't see anything. And I called the police and I told them, hey, I just shot my stalker. He was nowhere to be found. And I was like, holy crap, I'm going to jail tonight. I just fired a gun in an apartment building. 30 minutes later, they found him. He was hiding in the bushes. The police dogs caught him. Normally, anytime that the police came, he would just run from them. And he didn't recognize how hurt he was at this point in time, so he wasn't able to. And I just remember feeling so glad that other people could see him. Very long story short, he didn't die. He went to jail, but he was pretty jacked up. And I knew at that point that I wanted my firearm to be an extension of myself, so I actually started working in a gun range, being a part of Refuse to Be a Victim courses to help other women feel empowered to protect themselves. I ended up getting heavy metals toxicity working at that range and was just like not in a good headspace from going immediately to work in that type of environment without fully dealing with what had just happened to me, and ended up leaving and working at a call center. And I loved this call center. Shout out to Ashurian. And I ended up becoming a coach, which I ended up then becoming a consultant, and it moved me across the country. And working there for 5-6 years gave me the foothold to be able to work for big tech, which afforded me the life that I have now. And right now I'm in Bali on my eat, pray, love bullshit. And I never would have had the bravery to live the life and do the things that I've done and have the experiences that I had if I never had to choose myself in that very, very, very crucial way. Most people never get put to the test of having to choose their life. And so I live my life in the way that I do because I have felt the darkness before. I understand that at any point in time, somebody could try and take that away from you. So I don't take it for granted.